it's appropriate that our series on the surprising David occurs during the week of the surprising snowstorm. It was everything we could possibly hope for, wasn't it, students? Yes, although, this is now a pay it forward, because somewhere in June we're going to be paying for these snow days. Yeah. Our church here has quite a heritage that we don't close down for snow. And I was fascinated that I didn't get a phone call asking if we were going to have church today. I think that's a fascinating thing. We do worship here on Saturday mornings and now on Saturday afternoons here at 12:40 in the afternoon every week. The 1 week in the last 7 years that I've been your pastor that we didn't do it was that Snowmageddon about 4 years ago just now when we had 25 inches or so. And if you will remember, we had our worship service on the internet. I got on Skype in my house and we had worship. I Skyped with, I think it was Russ Mulder, but it might have been Nick Shipowick, but I Skyped there. They got it over to our website, and we had 250 sites or so on our website for that. We don't cancel much in worship. However, we do sometimes make some changes in other things. Nathan Wetzel and I talked yesterday, and we are postponing, perhaps canceling, the Pathfinder can collecting that was scheduled for this afternoon and tomorrow. The streets are narrower than they used to be now, with snow at the edges. And we didn't think it was a smart idea to put a bunch of Pathfinders in the middle of snowy, slippery streets. We also are postponing the open mic coffee house scheduled for tonight. And that will be probably 3 weeks from now. You'll get more information on that in Life at Beltsville. Do you all get Life at Beltsville? That's our email newsletter. If you aren't getting it and you want to, you can do one of two things. You can go to beltsvillesda.org and sign up. There's a little place there that says sign up for our email newsletter. Or you can fill out one of those connection cards in the rack in front of you. Make sure you get your email address on it, and we will add you to our Life at Beltsville. Did you notice how tech we have become? We've become kind of techie here at Beltsville Church. Our praise team reads the scripture from an iPad mini. I want to ask you to take out your cell phone. Take out your cell phone, and I'm not going to ask you to turn it off. I'm actually going to ask you to use it. See, there may be some people that you look around and you notice aren't here. Send them a text message that says, I'm at Beltsville and we're having church. Send them a second text message that says, you can join us online at beltsvillesda.org. And maybe they'll be able to join in with worship this morning. You also might want to post that on Facebook so that people know they can find us on Facebook as well. I am living with winter cold, so we're going to work at getting here. Our Surprising David series. Let's jump into this. Our first piece was the surprising thing David did after he was anointed king. You'll remember Samuel came down, anointed him king, and we looked at the phrase, God uses whom he chooses. David isn't the oldest child, he's the youngest. Normally the oldest would be chosen. He's not high up the socioeconomic scale. He's a shepherd, which was way down scale. But God uses whom he chooses. And then once David had been anointed king, at least 10 or 20 years transpire before the appropriate time has come for David to be king. So God uses whom he chooses, when he chooses, was our first week's message about the surprising David. Then we came to the second week, where we looked at the story of David and Goliath. And from that story, we learned that God uses whom he chooses, how he chooses. If David had put on Saul's armor and gone off to fight in someone else's ways, he probably would have been defeated by Goliath. But because David fought in his own armor, David fought with the sling and the shepherd things, with the gifts and the talents he'd been given, David's able to win a great battle for the Lord. And I challenged you, fight in your own armor. Don't let somebody else force you to be a Christian in their mold. Instead, be the Christian God is calling you to be. It's surprising things we learn from David. But today we look at yet another story. We look at the story of David and Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth had been dropped when he was young and was lame in both feet. And Yvonne, I forgot to warn you about this. I'd like to have you go back and find me like 2 rows of people to come up here, because we've got to tell this story. Can you go find a couple of rows of people and bring them up? I forgot to give Yvonne warning. I was going to ask her to do that. We need to look at this story of David and see what we can learn about the surprising way David kept a promise. Oh, I see 1 row of people coming up. Thank you. That's a row of people. Thank you. And maybe a second row. Come on up here. We could use a second row. Very nice. Peter and Keondo and row of people. Come on up. Yeah, and do you notice how people just always get way over here in the corner? I need a King David for this story. Thank you very much for being King David. Volunteers are such wonderful people. Incidentally, David is sitting on the throne because when this story happens, David is king. Yeah, King David here. Good for you. I need a Mephibosheth. Oh, Peter, thank you for being Mephibosheth. Nervous about David because Mephibosheth is one of Saul's descendants. And normally a king kills the descendants of the other king. So Mephibosheth goes a long ways away. He goes a long ways. A long ways. He goes way over there. Way over there. Okay. Now, I need 2 soldiers. Oh, Rose and Kimberly, you guys are the soldiers who are one on each side of David. One on each side of David. And then the rest of you guys, you are the wonderful courtiers who fan David and keep him quiet. Oh, yes. Yeah. We have a grand palace up here, don't we? Yeah. Fanning, thank you. David's going to start sweating here if you don't keep him cool. Now, at this point, David has been king for a while, and he's thinking. David is thinking. Ah, yes. David is Rodin's sculpture. And he says to himself, there must be somebody left in Saul's family that I could show kindness to. And so he asks around and he finds out there is this guy named Mephibosheth who is a long ways away. But he sends his soldiers, go find Mephibosheth. Good soldiers. Now, the soldiers go to Mephibosheth's house. Hang in there. Mephibosheth sees soldiers coming from David, And I'm just guessing he doesn't think, oh, goody, 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 David is calling me. No, in fact, he's shaking and quaking. He's feeling pretty scared. And he's lame to start with, so he doesn't have an easy time walking. But he walks through the forest. We're making a forest here for you to walk through, okay? He walks through this forest. The soldiers help him because he's lame. Yeah. He walks through and he comes around and he comes to David. Oh man, our guys over here are fanning him really well. Come on over to David. And when he gets into David's presence, he falls down on the ground to worship. He falls down on there we go. Way down on the ground. Yeah. He is scared. You see, David's the king. He could be considered a rival to the king, so Mephibosheth is very scared. David's first words are, don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Oh, good, David. You reassured him so much. No, he's still scared. He's still scared. Yeah. It's not until David says to him, I'm going to give you back all the lands of your grandfather Saul, and I'm going to let you be eating at my table. You will get fed with my sons. You will be honored as if you are a child of the king. And at that point, Mephibosheth stands up. And Mephibosheth finally believes that he truly is honored and loved by David. And that's our story for today. Thank you guys for helping us out. Appreciate it. Thank you, David. Yeah. Thank you, soldiers, and thank you, palm wavers. You were terrific. We come now to two things in this story of the surprising David. There are two very specific things I'd like to drag your attention toward. The first one is this Hebrew word. Can anybody read it for me? Yeah, I didn't think so. Can anybody read it for me now? Still may not help a lot. The word is chesed. And it's in this chapter that we're looking at. 2 Samuel 9 is our chapter today. And if you would look in there, in the first verse, David asked, is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show chesed? That's kindness for Jonathan's sake. You see, David wants to show this grace, this favor, this kindness. It's what Boaz shows to Ruth. It's what Jesus shows to us. It is something given to someone, not because they've earned it, but because you want to give. It is a primary gift of the giver, not a gift of the receiver. Now, if you go down a little bit, look in verse 3. The king asked, is there no one still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? There's that word hesed again. And when they find out that it is Mephibosheth, they go get Mephibosheth. And then if you will look at verse 7, verse 7, David says, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. Now there's an interesting piece in here. I want you to turn back, if you have a Bible out, 1 Samuel 20. You see, he keeps saying, for the sake of your father Jonathan. If we come back to 1 Samuel 20, David and Jonathan are seeing each other for what is probably the last time. Now, they've become great friends. But Jonathan is Saul's son, and David is Saul's successor. Now, in the eyes of the world, Jonathan would be Saul's successor. The firstborn son would be the next king. But in the eyes of God, God uses whom he chooses. And God's picking David. And Jonathan recognizes that. Jonathan has said, it's okay for you to be king. I will be your loyal servant. But Jonathan also knows that not everybody would agree with that, And some of them might be people who think he should be king. And some of them might be people who think David should be king. And probably somebody's going to come along and get rid of Jonathan. And so Jonathan, over here in 1 Samuel 20, Jonathan and David are talking for probably their last time. And look in verse 14. But show me, this is Jonathan talking to David, but show me unfailing kindness. There's that same. There's that same word again. Chesed. Kindness. Like that of the Lord, as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. Jonathan is saying to David, I know you're going to be king. I know that means I probably should die. And I just ask that you would show me unfailing kindness as long as I live. But then look at the next verse as well. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family. That's that same word, chesed. It is this word where Jonathan is saying to David, show kindness to my family. And now when David finds Mephibosheth, we're at least 10 years later, probably more like 15 or 20 years later. And David is remembering his promise to Jonathan. And he is keeping his promise to Jonathan. Jonathan has been dead a long time. Jonathan died with his father Saul at the time of a battle, and David becomes king of Judah, and then across the next 5 years or so becomes the king of all of Israel. But David now is remembering that promise to Jonathan and keeping it by bringing Mephibosheth to him. And we have this fascinating piece. You know, we wonder how a guy like David, who does so many things wrong, how do we call him a man after God's own heart? These words may be an important clue. You see, David says to Mephibosheth, do not be afraid. Jesus says to disciples when he comes to them walking on the water, do not be afraid. The angel says to Mary, do not be afraid. The angels say to the shepherds the night Jesus is born, do not be afraid. It is the message of divinity to humanity. It is the message of heaven to earth. When we truly encounter God, often we are afraid. And the first message God gives us is, don't be afraid. I want to be in your presence. I want to be with you. I want to be the king of your life. Don't be afraid. I want to be involved with you. And it may very well be that David is a man after God's own heart because he longs to show chesed, and he realizes that may scare some people. The surprising David. He's made a promise to Jonathan. And 10, 15, 20 years later, he is faithful to that promise. So today I want to ask you a question. What are the promises you want to keep? Maybe it's a promise 10, 20, 30 years ago. Maybe it's a promise to love, honor, and obey. Maybe it's a promise to your children to love them. Children, maybe it's a promise to your parents. Maybe it's a promise to your employer or employee. I don't know where your promises may be. But what is a promise today that you want to keep? What is the promise? Maybe it's to show loving kindness. Maybe it's to be faithful to a vow. I don't know what the promise may be, but I'm certain that right now you are thinking of a promise that you want to keep. I'm thinking of a promise as well. It's the promise at the top of our bulletin. It comes from 2 Peter 3. And I'm just going to pick the last of the verses that are there. We call that verse at the top of the program guide in your bulletin, we call that the focus text. It is the focus of our worship. And the last verse in that says, but in keeping with His promise, we are looking for a new heaven and a new earth where righteousness dwells. It took David a decade or two to keep his promise to Jonathan. God seems to be waiting for something, and maybe it's you and me to keep His promise about a new heaven and a new earth. But I want to share with you one more story to close with today, because it's not just about your promises you want to keep today. It's about His promises as well. And I wonder what the promise is you want to claim. I want to tell you the story of my life back when I was in 12th grade. I was a senior. That's big stuff. I liked being a senior. And I was at Maplewood Academy in Minnesota. Now, one of the differences between high school and academy is that in academy you have a Bible class. Now, you also have the Bible respected in every school when you're in every class when you're in a Seventh-day Adventist school. But there's a specific class that is focused only on Bible. And in my senior year, my Bible class was taught by the local pastor. His name was Pastor Charles Felton. And he had two classes of us seniors. There were too many to teach in one. He also had a church to pastor, a church that was in a building project, a church that needed to raise money. He had a lot of work to do. But he kept true to his promise to teach us. We had a Bible, we had a textbook, but we also had a second assignment. About 2 weeks into the class, he said, I want you to read another book in this class. I want you to read a book called Messages to Young People, written by Ellen White. Well, I'm kind of a geeky, nerdy dweeb. I'd already read that book. I'm always looking for information. I love to find new information. I love to try to assimilate it into my life. So when I saw a title, Messages to Young People, I'm thinking, I'm a young people. I'm going to read that. So I had read it probably a couple of years earlier. I came up to him after class that day, and I said, Pastor Felton, I read that book a year or two ago, and I've thought about maybe being a teacher. There's another book written by that same person called Fundamentals of Christian Education. Would it be okay if I read that book? I could tell that he was having a really hard time processing that a young person had actually read Messages to Young People without it being a required assigned reading. He was struggling with that thought. Probably 15, 20 seconds of, it's a long time for 50. And I'm thinking, he's going to chew me out. I don't know what's going on. And 15, 20 seconds later, he said to me, okay, that sounds like an okay idea. And that was it. 2-3 days later, he asked me to stay after class. And I'm thinking, he's changing his mind. He's decided that there will be some times we're discussing Messages to Young People in class, and I have to read that. So I stayed after class. I come up to his desk after class. I say, you wanted to see me? He says, yeah. He says, I've been thinking, I know you're kind of busy. I know you've got some student government things, and I know you're involved in a bunch of stuff. So I just wanted to let you know that if you need to skip class someday, go ahead. No 17-year-old should ever be told something like that. No, it's way too big a burden for someone 17 to carry. But then he added something to it. He said, I think good grades are important to you, so I'll guarantee that you get an A. That is definitely something no 17-year-old should ever be told. Let me see if I got this right. I can miss class if I want to, and you'll give me an A. Yeah! There were weeks that went by when Pastor Felton and I didn't see each other. And mind you, it was not always that I had something that should be done. It was sometimes that I just wanted to take a nap back in my room in the dormitory. It was sometimes that I wanted to go to the library and read the newspaper. It was sometimes that I just was hanging out with friends. I abused what he had given me as a privilege, and I abused it a lot. Now we come to the end of the semester. What grade do you suppose I got? I'm going to tell you. I got an A. Here's the more important question. What grade do you think I deserved? I deserved the A I got because my A was based on his promise, not my performance. Now, this isn't really about my grades, is it? This is about your eternal life. Is there a promise you want to claim today? Now, I'm going to ask Debbie if she's going to play a little music for us, because I'm going to ask you if you want to come forward to say, I want to claim the promise Jesus has made. You see, Jesus' promise to you and to me is you don't get to heaven because you've worked really hard and deserve it. You get to heaven because you have claimed my promise of giving it to you. And you deserve to be there because of my promise. So I'm going to ask you if you want to come forward just now to say maybe one of two things. You may want to say, I want to come forward because I want to claim the promise. You may come forward because you say, it's so hard to believe that's all there is to it. I mean, surely there's more to it than that. But Pastor Felton taught me something I couldn't learn in any other class in any other way. He taught me about Jesus' salvation. He taught me about salvation in ways you can't learn by reading a book. And I learned that even if I'm not very faithful to Jesus, Jesus is faithful to me. And if you want to claim that promise today, I want to ask you to stand up, come up forward here. Come forward if you want to claim that promise today. If you want to say, Jesus, it's hard to believe it can be that simple, but help my unbelief. Just come forward from where you are. Stand up and come forward. Come nice and close if you would. The surprising David reminds us that God's chesed comes to us. It's just a promise we need to claim, that's all. So today, I want to encourage you that the promise Jesus makes to you is, I will come again and take you home to be with me forever. Let's pray. Dear Jesus, it's so simple, and we want to make it so complex. So just help us to claim your promise to us and live in that reality. Amen and amen. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for coming forward. God bless you as you find a way through the snow and as you look at His grace. I mentioned in the Life at Beltsville newsletter that the snow makes everything white. We're now 2 days later and everything's pretty scruffy looking. You need a fresh dose of that snow every day. And this is the promise you claim, to get fresh every day.